And we have gathered once again for our, well, I hope it's a ritual for you. It is for me. For another edition of Wake Up Wenatchee Valley. We're back together on this Tuesday, 28th day of March, 2023. The month is almost gone. It's a weather smorgasbord we have in store for you today. Going to get it all. Going to see some filtered sunshine. Going to see some clouds. Going to have some wind, a chance of rain, some snow in the upper elevations. Bluett's going to get some snow. I-90 is going to get some snow. Stevens, a little bit. Mission Ridge is going to get some snow. Going to get it all today. And a gradual warming trend. We're topping off with a really nice day on Thursday, and then right just in time for the weekend as we say goodbye to March and welcome April. Cool and wet weather. Forecast details are on the way. It was a busy news day yesterday in the newsroom. Mondays are busy. By definition, we'll have your latest headlines for what was going on around the valley in north central Washington yesterday with our newscast. In sports, the Wild won. The Minnesota Wild. They played the Kraken. Probably should have done that. We'll also have highlights from the last Mariners spring training game. Of course, opening day across the baseball world is the day after tomorrow, one of the great days of the year. It should be a national holiday. It isn't. I'm working on that. And in the back half of the program, they had their meetings in town last week. I'm talking about the Washington Fish and Wildlife Commission. This is the folks who give the guidance to the actual Washington State Department of Fish and Wildlife, the professionals, the administrators, but they have a commission that oversees them, and they met in Wenatchee a couple weeks ago, and our very own Jefferson Robbins had a chance to sit down with two members of the commission that actually live right here in the Wenatchee Valley. We'll have that conversation for you in the back half of the program. 2 minutes after the hour, it's 39 degrees. Yesterday at this time when we started the show it was 29 degrees, so it's milder, but we're going to get it all today. Let's start our tour. We begin, of course, with Wenatchee Heights camera, located directly behind me, and now it's going to fill up your screen. There is the Wenatchee Valley. Snow's almost all but gone. Just you can see a little bit of snow on top of Birch Mountain, and that's really about it. Again, it's going to be a little warmer today, but it's going to be windy, and it's going to be a wind that we don't normally see. It's going to be easterly. It's going to be blowing east to west, kind of a big sucking motion from a big low pressure system off the Pacific coast. We usually don't see winds blowing from east to west, but we will today. The wind will be topping off about 4 o'clock this afternoon. Then it'll be dying down, and by sunset tonight, we'll be done with it. Let's head on up to Lake Wenatchee. Always one of my favorite cameras. Come on, snow. Keep melting. Got to get that golf course open. Good morning to Lake Wenatchee from a beautiful view there. Yesterday's high was 51, normally 56. We're continuing this long period of cooler than normal temperatures for our afternoon highs, but we get 12 hours and 37 minutes of daylight coming our way today. We like that. And let's see what Ephrata looks like. The Ephrata camera was out of action for a little while. The Sky-Fi tower was working just fine, but the camera was on the fritz, but it's fixed, and there we go. At a sunrise looking out over Ephrata, the county seat of Grant County. Good morning to our friends out in the Columbia Basin. You're going to be windy today, too. And finally up to Lake Chelan and Greens Knob. Our farthest camera up Lake Chelan. I don't know what direction that's pointed in. That could be pointed either north or south. I've lost my bearings. And, of course, I'm not very bright, so you combine those two things. But anyway, good morning to Lake Chelan from our Greens Knob camera. It is going to be windy today. It's going to pick up in intensity mid-morning. It'll be blowing pretty hard between about 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock this afternoon, and then gradually it will decrease, so we like that. It'll decrease throughout the course of the evening hours, but we got a soccer game tonight at Eastmont. They get going at 7 o'clock tonight, and we shouldn't be dealing with any other wind. Again, the wind will be at its peak at about 4 o'clock this afternoon, then it will gradually diminish. That's your wind direction. Again, we don't see that very often, and those are your peak wind gusts, not your sustained winds. Sustained winds will be, about 13 to 18 miles an hour, with the occasional gust up near 30, as you see there. And mountain snow, they've actually issued a winter weather advisory for Stevens Pass, number 2 Canyon, way up the top of number 2 Canyon, Blewett Pass, Mission Ridge. You're going to get some snow today. Could get about 7 inches of snow. So if you're driving to the mountain passes, especially look at that circle there. Now, they really don't know. They're kind of hedging their bets on how much snow they're going to get. But Blewett could get 4 to 6 inches, 2 to 3 inches of snow possible on Stevens Pass. It's out there, so we thought we'd let you know. So some of the higher elevations in our viewing area could get a little bit of light snow. You can see up the Waterville Plateau could get a little bit of light snow today. Not unheard of for this time of the year. From the National Weather Service, your forecast looks something like this. 20% chance of rain later on today. Snow level will be at about 3,500 feet. That's the magic number. Clouds will be thickening up. They kind of are already. High of 54 degrees and again quite windy at times today. The wind dies down tonight, but the chance of rain increases. It doubles up from 20% to 40%. Snow level is going to go down to 2,500 feet, but we're not expecting any precipitation tonight. 39 for the overnight low. Tomorrow morning, you're going to wake up to clouds and then the sun will be making an appearance by the afternoon. We'll climb up to 59 degrees. Thursday's forecast high is 60. I did the math this morning. We have not hit 60 yet this year. This time last year, we had hit 60 numerous times before we got to March 28th. The last time we got to 60 degrees here in the Wenatchee Valley for the afternoon high was Halloween, October 31st. It's been 147 days since we got to 60 degrees. It'll be probably in 149 days, but we hope to get to 60 on Thursday. Here comes the cool down on Friday as another system begins to roll in. It'll be mostly sunny Friday, but by Friday night, we're going to get some rain. Overnight Friday night into Saturday. You'll be sleeping when the rain comes down. It'll be raining Saturday morning. It'll also be a little breezy at times. Eventually the sun will be peeking out. We'll only get to 52, so we're going to cool down for the weekend. 51 is all we're going to get to on Sunday with a mixture of clouds and rain. And Monday, back to sunshine and a high of 52. The big story today, wind, quite a bit of it, especially mid to late afternoon before it dies down. 7 minutes after the hour, we'll come right back in 1 minute with your news. You're watching Wake Up Wenatchee Valley and the NCW Life channel.
I had had a seizure in the middle of the night, and they rushed me to the hospital and decided to induce labor to try to get the baby out. The outpouring of love and support I got from Confluence Health. My coworkers coming to the ICU to be with me. For me, it's the work family. It's just incredible to have support no matter what I'm going through in my personal life, my own health.
The Clearwater Saloon and Casino has the best Vegas-style games in East Wenatchee. Come enjoy yourself and discover the nightly action. Win big and meet new friends at the Clearwater Saloon and Casino.
Cloudy skies, 39 degrees. Going to be cloudy most of the day today. Very windy, especially mid to late afternoon before it decreases in the evening hours. Temperatures a couple of degrees below normal with some snow in the mountain passes, then a gradual warming trend until we get to the weekend. It's 8 minutes after the hour. Eastmont School District says it's learned threatening emails that were sent from a student's account, but it may, in fact, be a case of hacking. Superintendents say the threats appear not to be credible. They've contacted the student involved and the parents involved. They say it's a strong likelihood that the student's email account was compromised and used by an outside sender, but out of precaution, East Wenatchee Police were asked to be present at both Eastmont and Sterling Junior High campuses throughout the day yesterday. Bird scooters are going to be returning to the streets of Wenatchee coming up this summer. The e-scooters were deployed under a one-year pilot project last year, proved to be quite popular. People can rent the use of a scooter with a phone app and a debit card. In a city council meeting last Thursday, Public Works Director Rob Jammerman said Wenatchee proved to be a profitable market for the scooter service.
They had about 100 scooters deployed throughout Wenatchee last year. They had over 20,000 rides occur in about, I think it was around an 8-month period. The average travel distance on a scooter is 2.64 miles. In total, the scooters were used for over 53,000 miles. The average ride duration was about 22 minutes.
East Wenatchee Police Department moved into their brand new digs over the weekend and they opened for business yesterday morning. They used to be, of course, at the East Wenatchee City Hall. Were there for a long time, but the police department now has a new home of its own at 50 Simon Street at the intersection of Simon and Rock Island Road. The city purchased that property back in 2021. The department will share office space with that man, the coroner of Douglas County, Tanner Bateman, as well as the Columbia River Drug Task Force. Renovations were completed a couple of weeks ago. The total cost of the building and The subsequent remodeling was about $5 million. Police Chief Rick Johnson says the city will be holding an official ribbon cutting at their new headquarters sometime this spring. Pangbourne Memorial Airport used to serve 64,000 passengers a year before the pandemic. But since the pandemic, well, things have changed for not only Pangbourne, but also some smaller airports around the nation. Last Thursday, airport manager Trent Moyers was among several small airport operators testifying before the U.S. Senate Transportation Committee. They were invited by the chair of that committee, Washington Senator Maria Cantwell. They were asked for updates to the Small Community Air Service Development Program. That's a federal grant that helps small airports meet the challenge.
The number of daily flights to our airport has gone from 4 in recent years down to 1. The post-pandemic recovery of air service continues to be challenging in Wenatchee, but we know we're not alone. Today, 76% of airports have less air service than before the pandemic. 14 U.S. airports have lost all commercial air service, and 53 airports, like ours, have lost over half of their flights. In the Wenatchee Valley, 850 people drive every day to an airport other than Pangbourne because connectivity from Wenatchee is limited. A single flight per day to Seattle means only 76 people can directly access air transportation to or from Wenatchee without spending 3 hours driving.
Is the issue that airlines, if you have pilot capacity and you can fly from Seattle to Hawaii, you probably make a little bit more money on that flight than Seattle to Wenatchee. And so what do we do you think? Because I don't think, so one, SCASDA focused on the market and then one focused on essential service. What's the best way for us to get at this underlying problem?
I can't disagree with you about a revenue on a flight to Hawaii versus to Wenatchee. And that's the challenge. Those business decisions are being made that marginalize a small market. It's hard for me to compete for service in Wenatchee versus a service from some other destination where there's a greater yield or return on their investment. And a startup service as well to bring new service in. That airline's going to incur some costs to bring ground handling equipment, ground crew, the ticket agents, all of those expenses. They're looking to the airports. How can you help us with that startup? And so there's some questions there as far as infrastructure and equipment that I can't answer fully right now. That is a big challenge for us in competition in other markets. From a rural standpoint, I think everyone's agreed that everyone deserves accessibility. I don't think there's a question there. It's how do we get to it? The SCASD programs that are in place right now with, I think the last announcement was $15 million. Is that enough to go as far as it needs to for enough communities to benefit from it? If an applicant is going to ask now for a couple $1 million, whereas before it was 700 or 800 or 800,000, those dollars aren't going to go as far and fewer markets will benefit.
And it's that time of the year, time to de-stud your tires. The Washington State Department of Transportation sent their annual reminder that this Friday, the last day of the month, is the deadline to swap out your studded tires for your regular treads. The penalty for not doing so, $137. It'll be issued by the Washington State Patrol if they catch you. Troopers could start ticketing violators as early as Saturday. The DOT estimates that studded tires cause between $20 to $30 million of damage to state-owned roads in Washington each winter, and they're not going to extend the season because they say the passes should be just fine by the time we get to the weekend. And that's what's making news at 14 minutes after the hour. Grant and Jordan and Jefferson and Malcolm and, I don't know, it's a pretty good crew. And a few people who wander in and out of the building. We'll be gathering the news for you tonight, and you can watch it on television or TV at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 10 o'clock, also on our YouTube page, our Facebook page, and our homepage. With the preview, here's Grant Olson.
Good morning, Dan. Coming up tonight on the NCW Life Evening News, clouds with breezy conditions today before we return to sunshine and temperatures near 60 on Wednesday and Thursday. I'll have all the details in your complete North Central Washington weather forecast. And in sports, Eric Granstrom takes a look at what's ahead in area high school sports, as well as the latest on the Wild and Kraken. That and all the day's news stories coming your way tonight at 5, 6, and 10 on the NCW Life Evening News. We hope to see you then. Dan?
Thank you, Grant. Got a news tip? Want to say hi? You can look at the bottom of your screen. That's how you do it. Our Facebook page, our email address, our homepage, and our telephone number. When we come back, we're talking Kraken hockey, Wild hockey, a busy day in prep sports and more. Sports is 1 minute away. You're watching Wake Up Wenatchee Valley on the NCW Life channel.
I believe we've been coming to Abby's for 56 years, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
56 years.
Remembering all the events as a family and a community that we spent at Abby's.
Excellent and delicious food at an affordable price. We're delighted that we live close enough to be able to be a frequent customer.
And we are.
And we are. In fact, we've got orders to bring home a giant pizza when we leave here tonight.
Get even more cash back to boost your insulation, keeping your home comfy year-round. Now until March 31st.
"16 minutes after the hour, the Seattle Kraken wrapped up their 4-game road trip on a losing note. Minnesota got the best of them 5-1. Seattle was on the attack early in the contest, but Wild goaltender Marc-Andre Fleury was up to the challenge. Minnesota, in the meantime, took advantage of the few scoring opportunities that they had.
West of here, he started it out and lugged in by Geekie. Fed to the slot, and Alexiak's shot got turned aside with traffic in front.
And then they get to work after the TV timeout. Good work by Boldy to possess the puck and then get it to an area where he can get some help from Johansson, and then a real smart play here.
Held it in now, Boldy. Forced it to the goal line in the near side corner for Zuccarello. Touched along the line, held in there by Spurgeon. Johansson fires the seam pass. Boldy! Score! Nice to meet the fellas from up top. Larson worked it toward the net here. Sprague shuttering. Tanev on the backhand. And Fleury makes a stop.
He showed some promise in Ottawa. I can tell you that.
Boldy scores again! Wow! Minnesota up 3-0 here on Seattle. First minute of this third, and how did the Kraken respond? You talked about the top line for them and the impact that was felt by Seattle early on. What else do you want to see from them as they turn it over? And Boldy! Oh, man! He is hot! It's a hat trick for Boldy!
With a 4-goal lead.
McCann stripped Johansson, dropped it out for Beniers. Everly, and a safe Fleury! Bjorkstrand now on a pinch from Schultz. Cut off there by Merrill, flipped out toward the line, and Zuccarello guides it out of harm's way. Now he feeds Hartman, joining the rush. Hartman shoots and scores! Told us earlier today, same injury Gus Nyquist has. That one held out, and on a redirect, they score. Larson in front. Schwartz working hard for Seattle, who is on the board with 9 minutes to go with some Plinko here in the third. Did the work offensively with his second hat trick in the last 5 games for the Wild, who continue to get it done without Kirill Kaprizov, and Matt Boldy once again the headliner for Minnesota.
Kraken finished their 4-game road trip at 2-2. They're back home tomorrow night. They got Anaheim in town. Thursday night. Anaheim will be in town at the Climate Pledge Arena at 7 o'clock, ESPN Plus and Hulu. Tickets go on sale this morning at 9 o'clock for the Wenatchee Wild's first-round playoff series against Cranbrook. The best-of-7 series will begin in Cranbrook this Friday and Saturday. Then they return to the Town Toyota Center for games 3 and 4 next Tuesday and Wednesday. Take a look at the schedule, and then if necessary, games 5, 6, and 7 will be a back-and-forth affair at Cranbrook, at Wenatchee, at Cranbrook. Go to WenatcheeWildHockey.com for tickets. Austin, by the way, Austin Drade, the voice of the Wild, will be my guest on Thursday. With all the coverage of the college basketball postseason and spring training, didn't mention this yesterday, over the weekend, he's back. Bobby Wagner, Seahawks signed their former All-Pro linebacker to a 1-year deal, $7 million reported. Wagner, of course, was released a year ago on the same day that Seattle traded Russell Wilson to Denver. He spent 1 year with the Rams. He was a second-team Pro Bowler, and now he's back to what he's calling his football home. The Mariners wrapped up spring training yesterday on the losing end. to San Diego. They share their facilities with the Padres. The final was 4-2. Marco Gonzalez went 5 2/3 innings on the mound. He allowed 3 runs on 4 hits. He finished the postseason 1-2 with a 5.52 ERA. Julio Rodriguez and Colton Wong did their part to keep Seattle in the ball game.
Top of the order, Julio Rodriguez, 1-2. There goes the runner. Pitch is grounded up the middle. That's into center field, base hit. Haggerty getting around second, on his way to third base. He'll stop there. And Julio Rodriguez with a base hit as Grisham took his time getting the throw back in, and Haggerty comes in to score. So Kerr at third, 2 outs. 2-2 on Colton Wong. Here's the pitch from Lugo. That's lined into left field, and a base hit. That'll tie the game. RBI single, Colton Wong.
By the way, Julio finished Cactus League play red hot. He batted .444 during spring training. The Mariners are now back in the Emerald City. And Thursday night, it is opening day. The Guardians in town. The game at T-Mobile Park, 7:10 first pitch. It'll be broadcast on Root Sports Northwest. There's going to be a special hour-long pregame show that starts at 6 o'clock. Bring it on. Busy day across north central Washington for prep sports. Here's your baseball schedule. There's a lot going on. Cashmere hosts a doubleheader against Kiona Benton at 3 o'clock. The 4 o'clock games, Manson at Tenasket, Wenatchee's at West Valley. Moses Lake visits Ike at 4:30. You got Cascade at Chelan. Brewster hosts Okanagan. Liberty Bells at Lake Roosevelt. Bridgeport will host Waterville Mansfield. Eastmont's on the road at Ephrata for a single game at 5:30. Fast pitch softball. Couple of doubleheaders this afternoon in Cooley City and in Cashmere. The Warriors will host Orville at 2. The Bulldogs will take on Kiona Benton at 3. Other single games today: Cascade at Chelan, Okanagan hosts Brewster, Liberty Bells at Lake Roosevelt, Waterville Mansfield plays at Bridgeport. Those games will start at 4:30. Eastmont's tennis courts are unplayable, so they're going to have to move all their home matches this year to where Wenatchee normally plays, the Wenatchee Racquet and Athletic Club, and that'll be the site for the Wildcats and Sunnyside at 3 o'clock. In tennis and other tennis matches, Wenatchee's at Ike, Cashmere's on the road at Okanagan, and Cascade will host Chelan. Busy day of games on the pitch. In boys soccer, take a look at the schedule. Take a quick look-see at Chelan and Cascade. That will be played at Lieboftel Field at the Apple Bowl at 8 o'clock tonight. Cascade's home field is still not in the best of shape. And yes, we will be at Wildcat Stadium tonight. The Wildcats and the Eisenhower Cadets in boys soccer. Eastmont is 3-2. 3-2-1 overall to start the season. They're 1-1 in Big Nine play. The Cadets have only played 2 games so far. They tied East Valley and defeated Moses Lake. The handsome and debonair Sebastian Moraga and the even more handsome and more debonair Matt Wisen with the call. Pre-game at 6:45. They'll get going at 7 o'clock, and those are just some of the games that people are playing on this Tuesday. And today we're celebrating National Eat Something on a Stick Day. Today, when I think of something on a stick, I think kebabs. It was a regular barbecue thing back in the day because it's so easy. You can take the chicken and the pork and the mushrooms and little pearl onions and whatever, and have yourself a lamb, stick it on a stick, put it over the barbecue, you're good to go. Kebabs. But there are all kinds of food that you eat on a stick. Caramel apples, ice cream, corn dogs, cotton candy, I guess. So whatever it is that you eat today, popsicles, whatever it is that you eat today, eat it on a stick. There you go. Last night, I celebrated National Eat Something on a Stick Day early. I had my spaghetti, last night's dinner, on a stick. Pretty messy. Not a good idea. Whatever it is that you eat today, stick it on a stick. It is 24 minutes after the hour. 90 years ago today, the first ever plane crash by sabotage, brought down by a passenger on purpose. 90 years ago today, the city of Liverpool, a regular flight between Germany and Liverpool. The person responsible, Dr. Albert Voss, he was a dentist who was a native of Germany, emigrated to Great Britain and became a practicing dentist in Manchester, England. And in Great Britain, they didn't have certain painkillers that dentists used, anesthetics and what have you, but Germany did. So Albert Voss would fly from Manchester to Germany on a regular basis to pick up anesthetics and painkillers that he could get in Germany and not get in England. And he kept flying back and forth, and pretty soon he realized, hey, there might be some business involved in this. And Dr. Albert Voss he started making a lot of money smuggling drugs. People in Great Britain liked their painkillers that they couldn't get in Great Britain, so he became a rather well-known drug smuggler. Eventually, the authorities started closing in, and he realized that he's going to get caught. So on the airplane that he was in, flying from Germany to England, he set the plane on fire, and the plane went down. Probably could have just let the plane land, Albert, I don't know. So that was the first time ever that a plane has lost to sabotage, 90 years ago today. 73 years ago today, for the first and only time, you got to remember, back in the day, the NIT, the National Invitational Tournament, was a much bigger and much more prestigious tournament than the NCAA tournament. Teams would turn down going to the NCAA tournament to play in the NIT for two reasons. Number one, it was more competitive. A lot of people considered the NIT champion the true national champion. And number two, the games were played in New York City. Not bad. But history was made on this date when the Community College of New York, CCNY, defeated Bradley 71-68 to win the NCAA tournament. A couple of weeks before, they had also beaten Bradley 69-61 to win the NIT tournament. The only team ever to win the NIT tournament, at that time more prestigious, and the NCAA tournament in the same year. Happened in this state in 1950. And this is the 44th anniversary of 3 Mile Island. Scared the bejesus out of Dauphin County, Pennsylvania. Closest we've come to a meltdown here in this country. It's still the worst of the nuclear accidents that we've had. There have been worse nuclear accidents, but not here. 3 Mile Island, 1979. 26 minutes after the hour. Birthdays. Gussie Busch. Gussie Busch, who built the Anheuser-Busch Company from nothing to the largest brewer in the world. When he was president and owner of the company from 1946 to 1975. He was also the owner of the St. Louis Cardinals. His players loved him. He took care of them. He paid them good. They got a lot of good food on the road. They loved Gussie Busch. He bought the St. Louis Cardinals in 1953, but he didn't own the ballpark. Sportsman's Park in St. Louis was owned by the Browns, but the Browns moved to Baltimore. So Gussie Busch bought Sportsman's Park so he wouldn't have to pay rent to the Browns. And he fixed it all up, renovated, spruced it all up, and said, I'm naming the new park, the newly renovated park, Budweiser Stadium. And Major League Baseball said, can't do that. Now, of course, corporate naming rights are everywhere, and most parks do have corporate naming rights. He said, I want to name it after my beer, Budweiser. Major League Baseball said, nope, can't do that. He said, can I name it after myself? A lot of parks were named after the team owners. They said, sure. So it became Busch Stadium. And then Gussie Busch came out with Busch Beer a couple of weeks later. That's how you work around that little problem. Gussie Busch, legendary brewmaster, born in the state in 1899. Another heavenly birthday, Marlon Perkins. This was a point of viewing for me. Never miss an episode of Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, featuring your host, Marlon Perkins. He was born in the state in 1905. Wild Kingdom ran from 1963 to 1985. Still available on YouTube. Happy birthday to Lady Gaga. Lady Gaga, her Super Bowl performance in February of 2017 remains the most viewed musical event in history. Lady Gaga. 37 years old today. Going to take a break. Mike McNally's got an opinion and then a fascinating interview that Jefferson Robbins conducted with the two North Central Washington residents who are members of the Washington State Fish and Wildlife Commission. That interview when we come back. You're watching Wake Up Wenatchee Valley on the NCW Live channel.
Bring the whole family up to Stormy Mountain Brewing and local public house in historic downtown Chelan. Applewood smoked brisket, street-style tacos, and our award-winning barbecue rubs and sauces. Our meals pair perfectly with our exciting lineup of craft ales, made right here in Chelan. We've got room for big groups, or give us a call for catering. So grab the kids and check out the fun at Stormy Mountain Brewing and local public house located in the heart of Chelan.
Hey, this is Mike Mad Dog McNulty, and everybody's entitled to my opinion. Now, I occasionally get hate mail in the form of actual snail mail sometimes, emails and Facebook posts. Some of it's pretty nasty. Some of it going back to complaining about things I did when I was a police officer, even though I retired over 17 years ago now. And some of it is based on more current events. Now, this is never pleasant. It never is, but I do review every bit of negative input I receive as objectively as possible to see if there is some truth that I need to pay attention to. And although I occasionally do have to reconsider my actions, words, and behavior, Sometimes this negative input is just plain nasty and really doesn't apply. Then I tell myself, if you aren't making enemies once in a while, you're also probably not making much of a difference. Anyway, that's what I tell myself. This is Mike Mad Dog Magnotti, and everybody is entitled to my opinion.
Welcome back at 31 minutes after the hour. The Washington Fish and Wildlife Commission has 9 members. Their job is to set policy for the State Department of Fish and Wildlife. The commission holds public meetings all over the state. A couple of weeks ago, they gathered right here in Wenatchee, which was convenient for a couple of board members who live in our area. Commissioner John Lemcole lives in Wenatchee. Vice Chair Molly Linville is a resident of the Palisades. And our very own Jefferson Robbins spoke with our 2 local commission members about how they came to serve on the commission and how they're helping steer wildlife management in this state.
I want to just talk a little bit because it's unusual for our area, the Wenatchee Valley, to be represented by not 1 but 2 folks on a very influential statewide commission like this. Can you talk a little bit about your backgrounds? I know that both of you have backgrounds in wildlife biology. John, how'd you come to this?
Well, I was a wildlife crazy kid, and my first job was to get a bachelor's degree in wildlife biology in Humboldt State, and I never looked back from there. I worked in the field for about almost 50 years now, and I worked most of the time for the Forest Service, and I spent 20 years working here in Wenatchee for the Forest Service and retired in 2013. And, I wasn't done retiring. I was taking another job, basically. I was self-employed. So I got the opportunity to be on the commission here, and I thought that would be a great thing for me to do, make a contribution. I have the experience as a wildlife scientist. I worked as a scientist for the Forest Service, and I've been a hunter and fisherman all my life, so I can speak to that crowd. I've worked in biodiversity issues, so I can speak to people who are more interested in that, so I thought I could make a contribution.
And Molly, how about your background?
Well, I was born and raised on a wheat and barley farm in Lincoln County, and that was established in 1886, and so I have really deep roots in the state of Washington and love the state. And like John, I was also a wildlife crazy kid, and I actually didn't know that wildlife biology was even a thing until I went to the university and became a wildlife biologist. And I spent 10 years with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service as a wildlife biologist in the Mid-Columbia River Refuge Complex in the basin. And after my husband and I very unexpectedly inherited our cattle ranch here out in Palisades. And so I quit my wildlife job and became a cattle rancher. And during that time, the Wolf Advisory Group, the state's Wolf Advisory Group, was looking for members. And I thought with my wildlife background and being a cattle rancher, I might be a good fit for that. And I ultimately did that, I think, for about 5 years. And during that time, we received some rather expensive but amazing conservation conflict transformation training. And so I felt like the state had invested in me, and so I kind of wanted to give back or continue, the good that I learned from that training. And so I actually signed myself up to be on the commission, that's not typically how it's done. But I thought I could continue to serve in that capacity, and that happened, and I'm pleased to be on.
And you're about 5 years in now, I think.
I'm 3 years and 8 months, but who's counting?
And you're serving as vice chair for this term.
I am, yeah.
The landscape that the two of you are living in, John, you live in Wenatchee, we should say, Molly, in Palisades, close together, but worlds apart in terms of their ecology. what do you think, John, living and working and playing in this environment does to inform your sensibilities? To what kind of insights does it give you that you can then bring to the Fish and Wildlife Commission?
Yeah. You know, one thing that's great about the Wenatchee area is that you're right in the center of so many different biomes. You know, we can go 20 minutes and get up to Mission Ridge and be in alpine areas. We have forest. We can go across the river into the shrub steppe. So it's a great place to enjoy the natural environment as well, and at the same time experience all the different joys and issues that those different environments have. For example, forest restoration, we have fires and, you know, range fires, forest fires. So we have a lot of those issues. And the other thing about the Wenatchee area is that it's a small community. It's not a really small town. Well, it's a small town, I guess. But it's very diverse. And so what's interesting about it is you have an agricultural economy here. You know, you have rangeland across the river. You have orchards here. A lot of different sorts of groups to learn what their interests are, what their concerns are. Impacts on wildlife are all different. And so I think it's, you know, it's a diverse environment socially and naturally. And so that's what makes this interesting. And I think living here, I've lived here since '94. I think I've got a pretty good sense of what the issues are, and I think I can bring those to the commission and address the issues that way. Yeah.
And Molly, working your ranch must give you a lot of ideas to bring to the table.
It does. I'm sort of one of the only land managers on the commission, and I actually managed land when I was with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I managed Convoy Lake National Wildlife Refuge when I was there. And I think that is an important aspect. Managing land on a large scale is expensive. It's sort of complicated. It takes people to do that, even to just keep a piece of land intact, but not sort of be doing anything on it. Even that is an expensive proposition. So I think I bring that to the table. I really only have experience in shrub steppe habitat. That's actually sort of a limit for me. But I think what I brought to the table around that is, and I'm not sure how I feel about it, but I think I helped get people excited about the shrub steppe habitat. The department did a great little video called This Land is Part of Us, and it's on YouTube. People can find it there, about the shrub steppe habitat, its importance as an ecosystem, and the biodiversity that can be found there, which always surprises people. So I think I've sort of been the cheerleader for shrub steppe. Sort of the downside of that is people can love ecosystems to death, right? And so when you awaken an interest in the public on a ecosystem level, then you have to deal with impacts from people. But my wildlife background is useful, but because we're policymakers, I feel like the best thing that we can do for wildlife is have the people around it working together, collaborating, and getting along. I think that's more even important than applying the best science to wildlife, at least at this level.
You both mentioned the diversity of ecosystem, but there's also, as you brought up, there are people around ecosystems, and there's kind of a diverse patchwork of regulatory authority around wildlife and fish management in the state of Washington. So what are the particular challenges of trying to set policy for this department in kind of a patchwork state like Washington? Molly, if you want to speak to that first.
Sure. So I guess I'm kind of often a cheerleader. One thing that I think it's an opportunity is working with the department to work with private landowners, because as you say, it doesn't matter if we preserve 300 acres that the department owns if we're not managing together with the private landowners or federal partners or tribal co-managers' land. And so I'm always rooting for having the department work with folks like the conservation districts in each county. And the reason for that is conservation districts are non-regulatory. And so sometimes people And the department is regulatory. And so sometimes landowners are more willing to work with a non-regulatory agency because reduces the fear factor. And so I would like to see us continue down the path. The department's making good headway in that, and I would like to see that continue.
John, you've said that you're a believer in collaborative efforts of this type. So what kind of collaborative issues do you run up against that you think that the commission can try to smooth over?
Yeah, I think smoothing over. We have a lot of that to do, I think. But I think Molly touched on it. I mean, part of the issue of having a patchwork of entities to deal with is we have some of them are easy to work with. It's easier maybe to work with our federal partners that, like the Forest Service and such, that they have a mandate for conserving natural areas. But I think a lot of our wildlife issues and the key to wildlife conservation and use in Washington is working with the private landowners and getting those people to collaborate with not only among themselves but also with the other people that are interested in the issues. So, for example, working with species conservation. So we have a lot of people that are interested in endangered species and working with them, and the landowners they're also interested in these animals as well and habitats. But sometimes the burden of conservation is on them because the animals are living on their property, and so that's the challenge of working with them. But I think my experience so far is that we have a lot of people, landowners, private interest, other people that are interested in working together. I've spent 10 years locally on the board and working with the Chelan Douglas Land Trust was one of the organizations. And, that is, interested people working together collaboratively, working with landowners that are interested, sellers of their easements or their properties, to come up with solutions to some of the problems. So I don't know, I'm an optimistic person. And I think as I go around and I talk with people, people are interested in the environment and keeping it intact and conservation. So I think I'm optimistic about that.
Well, the two of you are serving on the commission during a period of a lot of change in the natural world. Climate change is creating challenges across the board. John, is there a particular wildlife or fish-related issue that you think it rises to the surface when you think about challenges ahead? Some area that you think is really deserving of attention?
Yeah, I think probably one of our biggest challenges is fish, anadromous fish, salmon and steelhead. And I'm not a real expert in those, so this is a steep learning curve for me on this last year. But that issue touches everywhere in the state, from the mouth of the Columbia all the way to the headwaters of the Columbia and our local streams here. So that is, to me, is one of the toughest issues. We not only have people wanting to catch the salmon and utilize them, but we also have habitat restoration issues, and that's one of the big things. And of course, we have the dam issues and that. So I think fish is going to be a big thing. We have other terrestrial wildlife issues that, there's always individual species that we're dealing with and threatened and endangered species. I think in terms of management issues, we have, of course, we have lots of issues related around hunting and issues that have come before the commission that have been sort of hot issues, but a lot of them aren't hot issues. So, I mean, there's a lot to talk about in that, and I think that's one of our conflict zones in terms of the commission and the public and how they deal with wildlife.
Molly, particular challenges that you assess?
So mine's hasn't risen to the table yet, and it's a kind of a slop over from my life in agriculture. But for me, the most imperiled resource that we have is our soils. The biology in the soil is complex, and it has direct correlation to climate change reversal through the photosynthetic process and sequestering carbon from the atmosphere. So but it's hard to get people excited about soils. And if you aren't in agriculture, it's hard to know what to do for soils to improve them. But I'm hopeful that this is going to make it because, a few years ago, nobody was interested in pollinators either. And people have come to see the importance of pollinators. And so I think soil is going to make a big splash before long. And I think we really can get to talking about reversal of climate change if we can get people excited about soils. But that's a little bit different wildlife species than most people are used to talking about. But I think without soil, that even impacts salmon. So that's my focus.
What role do you think, Molly, does hunting play in wildlife management on the landscape? Is that role changing in Washington? I
don't believe that the role is changing. I think that in general, we have the highest population on the smallest land mass in the West, and it's getting tougher for folks to find places to hunt and where they, feel like they can take their families but the role of hunting as a management tool, I don't think has changed. I think it's still important. And it's just that such a small, so sort of in general, right? I don't think of it as hunters, but like the rural element of this state, is sort of less than 5% of the population. And so, it's hard to keep that voice out there, I think. And I think people feel sort of like they're not being heard. But the role of hunting has not changed. It's just the public's perception of hunting, I think, is changing to some degree. Some part of the public's perception of hunting is changing, but it is still an important management tool in the state's toolbox that I think needs to be kept in that toolbox.
John, you're a hunter. You probably agree.
Yeah, I do agree. And I don't see hunting ever going away. I mean, there's a sort of a persistent feeling out there now, like a conspiracy that the urban population is trying to do away with hunting in the state. And I reject that sort of out of hand because I think hunting is always, it has been and it will be an important part of our wildlife heritage and the way we use wildlife. And it can be a tool. I think the issue, as Molly said, is that we have a pretty dense population in Washington state, and that is affecting how, impacts on wildlife and diversity of opinions about how wildlife should be used. We're hitting more people's coming up with different ideas of, why wildlife are important to them other than hunting. And so there's a conflict being set up there. But what I try and tell people, and I've tried to say this at commission meetings and such when we get into these controversial things, is that, instead of looking at what we disagree about in terms of how we should be managing, we should be looking, we share a passion for wildlife. And so we need to think about that and how we can come to terms to agree to disagree, if that's it, or get along. Because I think in terms of our commission, what we've done in this last year, we've gotten a lot of criticism, I think, that we're not favoring hunters. Somehow hunters are losing and we're not giving enough to them. And the other side says we're giving too much to the hunters. So we're sort of stuck in the middle there, and we need to sort of find that sweet spot where we can do that. But I think this commission has supported hunters. We've passed the hunting seasons with almost unanimous votes. We've delegated that responsibility to the director. We feel so confident about it. There are a couple issues that are sort of hot spots with hunting groups, but on the other hand, we've had many votes where we've sided with the recommendations of the department on hunting issues. And so I don't like to see that conflict. I think that we share a lot more than we really realize, and we just need to come together somehow.
Some of that may stem from the spring black bear hunt issue, which has been going on for about a year and a half, 2 years, where the commission has not approved a spring hunt based on policies and recommendations from the department. Speaking of bears, grizzlies are getting a lot of attention right now because of a federal initiative to perhaps reintroduce them in the North Cascades Range. I don't know, and I wanted to ask, does the commission get input on grizzly reintroduction if that is to become a federal program?
If we had input, it would just be, it would only be input. It's because it's a federal listed species. It's the feds that are responsible for that. So we couldn't set a policy that said yay or nay on that.
And any reintroduction is happening in the national parks, also federal preserve. Okay. The two of you have been in this for a little while. John, you're sort of the freshman on the board, and Molly, as you said, just over 3 years. Do you feel like you'd accept or ask for another term if it was offered? You go for 6 years, right?
6, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's too soon to ask. It's like I feel good about my first year. I think it was pretty rough, actually, being sort of dropped into the middle of that spring bear hunting controversy. It was sort of like, I don't know, Molly's been around longer, but it's probably one of the hottest topics that the commission's had for the last couple of years. And so, we got dropped right in the middle of it. So it's like I sort of had to like ride the wave, right? It's like, okay, and how do I best survive? So I feel good about it. But, I don't know how I'll feel. Probably like I've done enough in next 5 years. I think, I don't know. I'm not getting any younger either. So, it's like I'm supposed to be retired. So, but this is a good retirement thing to do.
Molly, you put your name in the first time around. Would you do so again?
So I'm a big fan of term limits, and I think sometimes people get sort of entrenched. And so I'm mindful of that. If I could be convinced that I was still useful and fresh enough, I don't like getting in a rut, but I would have to be convinced that I was bringing something to the table still after my first term. And I am the only full-time employed commissioner. Everybody else is retired, and there is a cost to the business that I run with the time. We're giving, we can be giving 20 to 30 hours a week of our time. And so, that is something that I have to take into consideration, what it's doing to my business.
Ranch is not going to run itself.
No, and there's a lot of, feeding cattle with a headlamp on these days so that I can make to commission.
Is there anything that the two of you can think of that I didn't ask about that you think people should know about your work on the commission?
There's a little bit of angst about the diversity of opinions on the commission. And I would honestly say that this is exactly the right place for that. I think this commission is a almost perfect snapshot of the state of Washington with our differing viewpoints. When you're in it and you're not sort of getting your way because there's a different viewpoint, it feels frustrating. But I would encourage people to sort of try to be okay with it. And the reason is if we block out anybody's voice at this table, then what happens in this state is they go and they do an initiative, right? And then what I call ballot box biology, which I can't stand. So I would rather face the differing viewpoints at this table than run them off because it makes my personal job on the commission easier, and then have it come back around and bite us in the form of an initiative and two, it's just, even though it's hard, we have the opportunity to be collaborative at this table, and we can role model that collaboration and being respectful to people whose viewpoints might honestly drive us nuts, right? But we can still be respectful because that is their viewpoint, and they absolutely have a right for that. So I think when folks are upset about the makeup of the commission, I would hope that they would think about that.
Yeah, I agree 100% with Molly. It's that's one of the things that bothers me the most is that people are intolerant of a full and frank discussion on the commission. So if some commissioner says something they don't like, then they get very upset. But we have a diverse public Part of the wildlife, one of the sort of the tenets of wildlife management, and the hunters bring this model up. It's called the North American Model of Wildlife Conservation. The very first and fundamental public tenet is that wildlife is in the public trust. So it belongs to the people of the state, and the management agencies are the trustees, sort of. We're managing it for them. So we have to think about that this isn't just my wildlife, this is the public's wildlife. And so we need to hear a diversity of opinions, and we need that on the commission. So I fully support all the commissioners to speak frankly about the issues. And I think the public needs to realize that, as Molly said, if we don't solve these things, if we don't come together and collaborate, those issues are going to get solved by an initiative, a ballot initiative, which I think I always vote no on ballot initiatives, mainly because I don't think that's the way to solve these problems. So I think, and we've seen that. We've had it in Washington on ballot initiatives on baiting and using hounds for running animals. It happens in California. It's happened in Colorado with the spring bear hunting issue. And no one was satisfied with that. Well, some people were satisfied, but so I think that's an important thing that people need to keep in mind.
Well, John Lemcool, Molly Linville with the Washington Fish and Wildlife Commission. Thanks a lot for letting us bust into your meeting and take up some of your time.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks. It was a pleasure.
You're watching the NCW Life channel.
Hi folks, welcome to Save Mart. How can we help you today?
We're looking for a recliner.
Okay, right this way. Go ahead and move this chair on the other side. You can lift this up.
Great, I want that one. I like that one.
That's a great choice.
And I want this one as well.
Okay.
And I definitely want this one.
You'll find it at Save Mart. Full service at a low, low price.
I chose a career at Confluence Health because I wanted to help people, and I knew there would be opportunities for growth. I started as a medical assistant, but quickly advanced in my career. I received 5 promotions in only 7 years, 3 of those in management roles. Most organizations don't offer that type of growth. Now, as a career pathway coordinator, I let everyone know. Come join Confluence Health. Come grow with us.
How much are you paying for adult family or assisted living? The Epladolin Retirement and Assisted Living offers beautiful 1-bedroom and studio apartments for one affordable price. They are diligent with their cleaning and sanitary standards to keep all residents healthy. Residents enjoy good food and excellent care in a relaxed home-like environment. Rooms are now available, so call ahead for a tour and see if the Epladolin is the right choice for you. Epladolin Retirement and Assisted Living in Kashmir. Affordable care.
43 degrees here in downtown Wenatchee. Yesterday at this time when we visited, it was 30. It's a lot warmer, but temperatures are all over the place. We're at 43. Manson is only at 32. We're not that far apart. The big story today, there's actually 2 of them. Number 1 is going to be the wind. We're going to show you this slide for the National Weather Service, and we don't see this too often. The wind is going to be coming out of the northeast and blowing to the southwest. That's a pretty rare occurrence for us. It's basically a giant sucking action from a huge ridge of low pressure just off the coast of our state, which is why we see the winds blowing in that direction, and it's going to be blowing pretty good. It's already starting to pick up in intensity a little bit in some locations. It's going to peak at about 4 o'clock this afternoon. Strongest winds between about 2 and about 4. It's going to start dying down by about 5, and by about sunset tonight, right around 7:30, the wind should be done. But get ready for some windy activity for a brief period of time this afternoon. And they have issued a winter weather advisory for the area that you see there. We don't see this too often. Stevens Pass and Blewett Pass is going to get some snow. Mission Ridge is going to get some snow. Way up at the top in number 2 Canyon, they're going to get some snow as well. Not going to last very long, but wanted to let you know we're not quite done with winter yet, even though we've been springy here for a couple of weeks. Real quickly from the National Weather Service, here we go. Cloudy and breezy today, high of 54, should be dry, but the rain chance increases tonight with an overnight low of 39. Partly sunny, winds die down Wednesday to 59, 60 for the first time this year, for the first time since Halloween is the forecast on Thursday. Then we cool down and maybe get a raindrop or two for the weekend. That's it for us. Start your Wednesday with us tomorrow. Till then, bye-bye.